Have you ever been alone in your house at night and heard like a thump or a creak or what sounded like knocking or footsteps, and in your mind you rationalize it all away by saying it's the house settling or it's the wind or the cat? Well, this happened to our next guest, William C. Grave. He bought a house, and his first night in the house, strange things started happening. And he's been in this home for 19 years now, and the strange things have not stopped. Would you live in that house for all this time? Here to tell us the story about his house and some of the things that goes on there is our guest, William C. Grave, to talk about his book that he has coming out, The Lady in the Bay Window. Welcome to the show, William.
Thank you very much for having me, Jed.
So first of all, I just want to mention that William is his pen name and that all proceeds from this book will be going to a charity very near and dear to him called the Cavendish Cancer Care. So tell us a little bit about that, William.
Yeah, so Cavendish Cancer Care helped my mum. She was unfortunately diagnosed with a rare form of breast cancer 5 years ago. And she lost her battle back in May this year. But very brave battle throughout. My mum's been awesome throughout the whole thing. Very sad, obviously, to lose her at this stage.
Yes, very sorry.
I felt like I needed to do something for raising money for Cavendish Cancer Care, as they've done so much for my mum.
Okay, so now we're going to get into this book that you have out here. So did you hear anything about, like, the haunting, if you will, from previous owners of this house that you guys purchased, or that you purchased, I should say?
So, not really. So basically, I purchased the house. It had been owned by a lady since the 1930s. And when I purchased the house, a gentleman had purchased it 6 months prior. And he'd moved his mum into the house at that time. Now, the day that I got the keys to the house, I walked into the house and was greeted by the gentleman who purchased the house 6 months prior. And he kind of just said, look, I'm just getting a few tools out of the house. I've just fitted a new kitchen for you. I'll be on my way shortly. So first day in the new house, his mum sort of stepped out from behind him. Little elderly lady, long sort of black hair. And she said, can I just have a quick word? Just to let you know, I lived here for a while, but I just didn't feel very comfortable here. So I'm kind of moving out. And I was sort of looking at her a bit strange, as if to say, well, you're not comfortable. And as I was about to ask that, the chap sort of stepped in, who's called Nick, and said, Mother, sort of, don't scare the young lad, it's his new home. And I was a very naive 19-year-old, sort of lanky, tall guy at the time, and didn't think much of it at the time.
So how old is the house itself?
So it was built in 1936, and it was an ex-council house at the time. And as I say, that lady had lived in it from it being new. And I found this out through doing sort of research for the book, talking to neighbours throughout the estate and the road about the home, and sort of doing some research at the local library as well. So it's not a mega old house. It's quite a nice estate that I've lived in. I mean, I've been here now 19 years, coming up in December. And I enjoy living here, although some people think I'm a little bit mad for staying here, but I suppose I've got to stay here now because I spent the last 2.5 years renovating the place, so I'm not going anywhere soon.
So with them unloading it so fast, did you at least get a good deal on it, William?
To be fair, I think I was the first one of all my friends to buy a house at 19 years old, and I think I got a better deal than what they're getting now with the rates and things on houses. So
absolutely.
That's great.
So, William, were you ever one to read like ghost stories or express any kind of interest in like the paranormal prior to all what's been going on with you?
I suppose I've always been, I suppose like everybody, I've always been interested in sort of an afterlife, or if there's paranormal things going on. Watching things like Ghostbusters growing up and going into watching the odd paranormal thing on TV, but not sort of madly into it until I started to get really interested in it over the past few years as I've been doing research for the book. It sort of really intrigued me because of things that I've seen and I've heard around the house. Now, I've gone from being a full skeptic as a 19-year-old, not really believing in any of that sort of thing, to now I kind of class myself as a skeptic who's open-minded.
So you bought this house 18 years ago. You're still living in it. Now I know you, just from reading all your stuff and hearing prior interviews, that you bought this house when you were engaged. Now that you're married and with a baby, what does your wife think of all this stuff that's going on in her house?
Well, to be fair, I bought this house when I was engaged when I was 19. I was young and silly, and that relationship didn't work out. So this is sort of my second chance at things. So myself and my wife, Grace, as she's called in the book, been together for pretty much 10, 11 years now. She'll kill me for not knowing exactly. But it's probably 10, 11 years, and we've been married for coming up to 4 years now. We've got a little baby, Xander, who's 21 weeks old this week.
Ooh, he's just a little baby.
Yeah, so he's a teenager.
Congratulations, yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah, he's a very happy little man. I don't know if he'll be so happy when he finds out about the ghost stories in the house when he's a bit older, but we'll keep that under wraps until he's a lot older, shall we say.
And so what's her whole take on all of this?
She's very freaked out. I don't know if you've had a chance to see the video that I posted yesterday. I basically said on Facebook, if I get to 1,000 likes, which I can't believe I've got that sort of following already, it's amazing. So thank you to everybody for that. But I said I would post a video of the first time I tried to communicate with whatever spirit was in here. And you can hear on that video her reaction was, "Oh my God, I need to leave this house. Oh my God, we need to leave now."
Ooh.
She didn't like the fact that, she's seen the old lady, she's seen her twice. This old lady has been seen by 4 different people, and 5 times between those 4 different people. And I think the freaky thing for me is that it can't just be coincidence. These 4 people are good friends and family that don't know each other or didn't know each other at the time, didn't know of any prior stories either. They've all described exactly the same.
So what was like the first incident that happened in your house after you bought it that was, I don't know, strange?
Well, the first instance was actually, I sort of agreed to buy the house, and about a week before I moved in, I was going out on a works Christmas do to the local bowling alley, and a good friend of mine from work came to pick me up from my mum and dad's, and as we drove up the road, I said to him, "I've got some good news, I've just bought my first house with my fiancée," and he said, "Oh, whereabouts is it?" And I said, "Well, it's just around the corner, it's literally 5 minutes around the corner here." And he drove up to the house, pulled up alongside the road, and it was on the left-hand side of the road going down the hill, and it's sort of up at quite a steep path, so he leant over, as I said, pull in here, it's that one there. He sort of pulled in, leant over from different side of the car to you guys over there, and he pointed his finger up and said, "Is it that one there?" And I said, yeah, that's the one." He said, "That's the one with the old lady in the window." And I was sat sort of facing the house. I was at the roadside facing the house, looking at the window and couldn't see anybody. And I sort of looked at him and said, "Yeah, it's this one here." And I looked where he was pointing. He was pointing at that house. It's number 333. And I said, "Yeah, it's that one there." And he said, "There's an old lady staring down at us," and he looked very uncomfortable about it. Now, I didn't really question this. We kind of just drove off down the road, didn't think much of it. I thought he was kind of winding me up at first. I knew the house had been vacant for the past 4 months, and nobody was in there, so I didn't think much of it. The first day I moved in, so I got the keys the next week, and I'd invited all the lads round to come round for a bit of a chat and sort of see the night in style, have a few beers with the boys. We didn't have any carpets in the house or any furniture, so my fiancée at the time didn't want to move into the house. However, I couldn't wait to get the keys and go in, so I walked up the steep path, unlocked the door. The boys came round in the droves in plenty of taxis sort of an hour later, with a beer crate under one arm and a sleeping bag under the other. And we were going to see the night in style. And we sort of sat around. I borrowed the old Monopoly board game from my mum and dad's house and said, we'll have a drink and we'll play this game. And we sat there in the middle of the floor. there was a little, because it was Christmas time, there was a little Christmas tree set up in the corner, in sort of an alcove in the corner of the front room. Now, the front room was completely bare, apart from this Christmas tree, and me and 6 lads sat around a Monopoly board. And halfway through the game, I mean, we were probably 2 hours into a game of Monopoly, which you know how long that game can take. And one of the guys, who's quite a big lad, I've known him since I was, crikey, 11 years old. I've known him from my school days. And he looked over his shoulder. He was sat across from me, so I was facing the direction that he looked over his shoulder. And he freaked out. I mean, he jumped across the board, he knocked all the playing cards, pieces, everything all over the place, spilt drinks everywhere. And then he cowered into the corner behind me, sort of like a child. He was holding his knees, he was shaking, he was going really pale, his eyes sort of bulging out of his head, and he couldn't speak. And eventually I kind of calmed him down, and everyone was not very happy that their drinks had spilled. So I took him in the kitchen and said, what's going on? What's the issue? Now, bear in mind, this guy doesn't know my work colleague. Mm-hmm. He'd never spoken to before, didn't know about the previous sighting of this old lady in the top window. I'd not told anybody about that. I didn't think much of it. He said he'd just seen an old lady sat in the front room, and she was staring directly at him. And he described her exactly the same, sort of short grey permed hair. She had a cardigan on, she had a white blouse, and a long skirt on, and a real piercing stare. And that was exactly the same way that the work colleague had described her as well, a real piercing stare, like she didn't want to be there. So that was my sort of welcome to the new house on the first day.
I mean, what's so scary about this old woman that's so terrifying? Is it her stare?
Yeah, that's what I'm being told. I mean, I've not seen this old lady. So I've seen things happen in the house that I can't explain, but I've not seen the old lady with my own eyes. But the 4 people that have seen her, I trust them implicitly. I mean, they're good friends, mm-hmm. and 2 of which now are, one's my wife and one's my brother, my older brother, who doesn't, if you knew my older brother, he's quite a big lad. He's a big muscly guy, doesn't show a lot of emotion. And I've seen him in the same position as I've seen my friend in the front room, sort of cowering in the corner, because he's seen him. So
why do you think that she hasn't showed herself to you?
I genuinely do not know. I genuinely do not know. There's been things happen in front of my own eyes that I've witnessed that aren't logical. I'm a logical person. I look for the logical reason. If something happens in the house, if there's a noise, if there's something happens in front of my eyes that I see that I can't explain, I always go to sort of try and find out how it's happened or what's happened. I think the thing with the noises, the footsteps, the doors banging and opening and closing, that sort of stuff, that happens all the time. I mean, we're talking weekly. That happens. And every time I go to investigate what's happened, it stops. There's no way to sort of catch it in the act. Huh. No. It's so strange.
At this point now, have you found out who this woman might be?
At that stage, no. I mean, this was... Oh, sorry, now. Do you mean now?
Yes, yeah.
Yes, yeah. So, yes. So I spoke with the elderly gentleman, and I've written about this in the book as well. Mm-hmm. I spoke with the elderly gentleman next door, who lives on the next house down the street. And he's sadly passed away now, but I spoke with him when I was 19 years old. This was weeks after the first few things that had happened. I kind of needed to get to know what was going on, because there were some strange happenings happening in the first month I lived here. And he sort of laughed it off, but he kind of said there was an old lady that lived there from when the house was new. He'd moved in the 1930s too, and he'd known her all his life. And he said she was a very pleasant lady. She really looked after the house, and she worked as a furrier. She made expensive fur coats. So she's quite a posh lady, and she looked after herself, looked after the house.
Huh. Now, was there any occurrence that happened in that house that actually scared you? I mean, like, what was the first thing that was like, what the heck is going on here?
I think there's been quite a few things that have really freaked me out. I think one that will have people questioning how this happened, but there was a young lady moved in and rented a room here, because I lived on my own for quite a while. I used to rent the rooms out to a lot of friends. or family throughout the years. And a young lady contacted me and said she wanted to rent one of the rooms. Now, she was a friend of a friend. I got to meet her through a poker night that I used to hold here at the house every Thursday and have everybody round. It was a bit of a lad pad for about 12 years. She asked if she could rent one of the rooms. And on the first night she'd moved in, we had a bit of a big house party so I could welcome and introduce her to all my friends. Now, the next morning, one of the guys that slept on the settee overnight, who was sort of a friend of a friend, he mixed in the same circles as me, but a good guy all the same. And he'd slept on the settee overnight. In the morning, I heard him leave at about 9 in the morning. I heard the black cab pull up outside. I heard the door open, the door slam shut, and the keys were in the back of the door. I heard them jangle in the back of the door as the door slammed shut. Now, at this stage, I was a little bit hungover, so I didn't get up out of bed and go and lock the door. But I waited a couple of hours, and I woke up about 11 o'clock that morning. And I walked to the top of the staircase and looked downstairs and feared the worst. The front door was ajar, so it was open. Not fully open, but it certainly wasn't closed.
Mm-hmm.
So I walked downstairs fearing the worst, that somebody had broken into my house because I'd been too hungover to lock the door. I walked down, opened the door, and I saw the lady who was living there's purse was just thrown outside with all the contents on the floor. And we're talking mobile phones, cigarettes, makeup, everything was just sort of strewn out across the floor. I went upstairs straight away and I grabbed her and said, please come downstairs, have a look at this. I want to make sure there's nothing missing. I'm so sorry this has happened. I should have locked the door this morning. Very apologetic to her. And she checked everything. Everything was still there, which was a little bit strange because if somebody had broken in and taken a purse, surely they would have taken something from the purse. We then walked into the front room and I was sort of fearing the worst, that something might be missing, like a television or whatever in the front room. And as we walked in, this was probably the scariest thing I've seen. And I think you'll probably agree with me when I say that there were 5 knives stuck in the floor in the front room.
Oh, my goodness.
They were across the sort of threshold of the door to the kitchen. They were stuck about 2 inches into the floor. And we're talking big cooking knives, so ranging from 4 to 8 inches long cooking knives, all in size order. All evenly spread apart across the door, and they were in the floor easy 2 inches. I mean, we're talking like to pull them out of the floor. It's a bit like sword in the stone trying to pull these things out of the floor. We both freaked out a little bit, and I told her to wait in the front room while I went and investigated the rest of the house to see if anybody was there. As I walked in the kitchen, there were a few cupboard doors open, and the drawer to the cutlery drawer was open as well. And I looked on the kitchen side, and the knife block where these knives usually sat were missing. They were clearly in the front room and the floor. That was very, very scary at the time.
But even when this was happening, William, were you like thinking it's a ghost, or were you still thinking somebody did this?
This, I suppose, as a skeptic listening to this would say, well, you've left the door unlocked, anyone could have come into the house. Now, this was a Sunday morning on quite a quiet street where I've never had any trouble before. I mean, I've lived here so long because I've never had any trouble around here. It's always been such a nice estate. So for this to happen, for somebody to break in your house and do that, for a starter, it would have taken some precision for them to do what they did with the knives.
Right.
And to get them into the floor sort of 2 inches. For me to pull them out of the floor, I mean, I'm quite a big lad, and for me to pull them out of the floor was quite difficult. So it was a very strange one. I couldn't explain it, but put it this way, I didn't sleep very well for a few weeks after that. It was a bit of a freaky incident.
Sounds like the old woman didn't want that girl living there.
Well, that's it. A lot of people have said there's been a few things. The first night my wife stayed in this house, when she was my girlfriend many moons ago, the first night she stayed in the house was the first time that she saw the old lady. So whether it is, a lot of people have told me who are into the paranormal side of things, who've said it's because she doesn't want women in her house.
But has anything weird happened then to your wife that was kind of like the same kind of an incident where any of her stuff was like where it's not
No,
supposed to be?
she's not had any of her things sort of thrown about anywhere. We've had a couple of freaky incidents where we've both been sort of involved, where we've seen things. And recently, I think the whole thing that sort of drove me to write this book in the first place, I was doing a lot of sponsored dog walks to raise money for local cancer charities while my mum was poorly. I think when somebody close to you is ill, you kind of feel helpless.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to do something to help. So I was doing a lot of sponsored dog walks. I had a bit of an injury to my knee where I had to have an operation. And I was sat in the house that, I think it was a Saturday afternoon. I was sat having a drink with two of the lads who I'm good friends with. And one of them used to live in the house. He used to rent a room here for about 4 years. And he'd experienced plenty of his fair share of freaky things happening in the house. And he basically said, has anything strange happened, any sort of spooky things happened in the past couple of months? Because he's always intrigued about what's happening.
Stop this now, he shouted at the ceiling. You are freaking me out. The noise suddenly stopped. Darren, the older brother of the homeowner.
And the prior week on the Friday night, in fact, you'll like this because it's sort of, it involves Americans slightly.
Ooh!
I went up to bed on the Friday evening the week prior to that, and I was sat in the front room telling him this story. And when I walked in the bedroom, my wife was in bed. I walked into the bedroom and looked on the centre of the floor and saw a strange coin. And I picked it up, and it was a 1 cent American piece. Now, I've been to America before, but we're talking 6 years ago. It was a while back. I've been a few times, but the last time I've been was sort of 6 years ago, and I thought, that's very strange. I looked at the coin. For some reason, I looked at the date on the coin. It was 2014 1 cent piece. And I basically mentioned it to my wife, and I put it in my top drawer, and I left it, and I went to bed. The next evening on the Saturday, the same thing happened. I walked into the bedroom in the same position on the floor. My wife's in bed. I looked down, 1 cent American piece. Exactly the same position.
Wow, weird.
So I bent down. It gets weirder. So I bent down and picked the coin up off the floor. And I looked at the coin, 2014. I looked at my wife. She was asleep. And I said, are you winding me up? Have you put this here as a joke? Or why is this here again? And she said, it's nothing to do with me. And you've just woken me up to tell me this sort of thing. She wasn't too happy. But I grabbed the coin again, put it back in my top drawer. Next night, so that was Friday, Saturday night. The Sunday night, now, I'd hoovered the house that day. Mm-hmm. So I know there was nothing sort of untoward on the floor. Mm-hmm. I've gone up to go to bed, and my wife's already gone to bed sort of half an hour before me. I've walked up to bed sort of 11 o'clock, 11 at night. As I got halfway up the staircase, I saw a coin again, bang in the middle of the carpet. Now, I'd hoovered the stairs that day. I know there was nothing there. Mm-hmm. I picked this coin up. It's a 2014 American 1 cent piece again. I walked into the bedroom and said, "You've got to be winding me up." Woke my wife up again, which is not the cleverest thing to do as a husband 2 nights on the road. She said, "William, give me the coin. I'm going to put it on my bedside table on the far side of the bed, which is on the far side of the room." And she did. She put the coin over there, and I got in bed and I was Googling that night. Why would I find 1 cent American coins around my house? And the majority of the consensus was that spiritual people were saying that it's a sign that somebody is coming to visit you from America. Now, the weird thing was that my friend, who had lived here before, was actually coming the next week to visit for the first time in 3 years. Now, this is where the story gets a little bit strange. So the next morning, I've got up in the morning to go to work on the Monday morning. And as I awoke, I was actually working from home, but I had a meeting, so I had to get dressed up, showered and dressed up for a online meeting. I got my towel from the other side of the bed, walked into the bathroom, jumped in the bath to have a shower. I was halfway through having the shower, and I was thinking about the coin, as you would be, 3 nights on the road, and these random coins. And as I'm stood there, there was like a slap on the back of my leg, and it felt like it'd been thrown at quite a force. And I looked down, and I knew it was going to be the coin before I even looked down. The coin was that. and I picked it up, and I wasn't scared about it at this point. This was last year. I genuinely wasn't scared about it at the time. I kind of picked it up, and I was amazed that it happened. And I put the towel back round me, ran back into the bedroom and said, that coin, it was the 2014 coin as well. I said, it's just hit me on the back of the leg. And I put it on my bedside table. It sort of droplets of water around it because it just come out of the bath. And I was just amazed by what had happened. Now, my wife went off to work at the time. I went and did my online call, and then I went to go make a cup of tea. And I phoned my dad to tell him, because he's interested in all this side of things. And my dad said, well, where's the coin now? I said, well, it's upstairs on my bedside table. I said, I've taken a picture of it, where I've left it, and I want to see if it moves again. And he said, well, go and see where it is now. So I walked upstairs, and I looked in the bedside table. I'm still on the phone to my dad, and I picked up the coin. And as I picked it up, there was another coin underneath it, another 1 cent American piece. And now I've got two. I've got a 2012 and 2014 American 1 cent coin that have randomly appeared. And there was definitely only one coin when I put it down, 100%. So I was sort of freaking out a little bit. My dad was laughing down the phone saying, you'll be a millionaire if this carries on. And as I was telling this story, so the following week, I'm telling this story to two of my friends who are sat in the front room having a drink. And the one who's asked me about the spooky happenings, the one that used to rent a room here, sort of went quite a shade of white as I was telling him this story. And I said, what's up with you? What's going on? And he said, you don't believe this. He said, but when was I here last? And I said, I think you were around here last Sunday, because he was doing some wiring. He's an electrician, and he was doing some wiring for me. So I'm pretty sure you were here last Sunday. He said, you don't believe this. He said, I got home last Sunday, and I gave my work trousers to my wife to put in the washing machine, and she emptied the pockets and said, why have you got a 1 cent American piece? And he was really freaked out then that this spirit, because he's been involved with things happening here before, and he was really freaked out that the spirit sort of followed him home. So yeah, that was a very strange one. And it was literally from that my other friend who was sat there said, you have to write about this sort of stuff. You've got to tell people about these stories, because they're just mad.
They're bizarre. Now, do you ever talk to the ghost? Like, does it do something and you'll be like, or the woman or whoever's doing it, and just be like, come on now, really? I mean, do you ever talk to...
Yeah, yes, I do. My brother has occasionally told the spirit or whatever it is in the house to stop, and it does stop. So if the footsteps are happening or doors are opening and closing upstairs while you're downstairs, or vice versa, if you're upstairs, it happens when it's downstairs. It never happens. The footsteps never happen when you're in the same room. It's so strange. But if you tell it to stop, it stops. So it's definitely something intelligent going on. It's there's such a thing as stone tape theory that people talk about, where it's sort of a replay of events that have gone on before. This isn't stone tape theory. This is some sort of intelligent spirit here, because we literally can tell it to stop, it will stop. And I actually put a video on the Facebook page last night of the first time I spoke out to the spirit, where I'd been asked by a good friend of mine who's really into his paranormal things to ask a question, because we kept getting a sort of a thudding sound, like somebody banging a clenched fist onto the floor. And it kept happening. It was coming in sort of 1s, 2s, 3s. It's like somebody's trying to get your attention, but it was coming from upstairs while we were downstairs. This was during COVID, so this was only 2 years, I think it was 2-3 years ago, this. And I eventually plucked up the courage to ask out, and he told me to just ask a question and say, can you knock twice for if there's a spirit in the house, sort of thing. So I asked the question, and we heard 2 massive thuds come through the ceiling. And that's when my wife freaked out. I mean, she kind of straight away just said, oh my God, I can't live here. We've got to move out. We can't live here. And at that stage, to be fair, I was kind of told, you're not communicating with the spirit. You need to stop. It was really freaking me out.
So how do you now coexist with this, William?
I kind of have to after renovating the house for the past 2 months. I'm stuck here for quite a while now, but I mean, I do love the house, and I've written about this in the book. I've kind of said I love the house, and from what I've heard, the lady who lived here before loved the house. So I'm staying put, and I'm not sort of scared of it. I'm more intrigued about what's happening. My wife, not so much. It really freaks her out. And there's a few friends of mine. There's one friend that's not been here for the last 15 years because of an event that happened in the book. I'll not tell you too much about that.
No. They could go pick up the book. Yep.
But yeah, he's not been back for 15 years since what happened that day. And he used to be here 2-3 times a week. And there's another good friend of mine who he has his hair cut here sort of once every month from my wife. And he won't go upstairs. Well, he will go upstairs to check himself in the mirror to make sure everything's okay. But he runs back downstairs like a herd of baby elephants. He's petrified of sort of being in the house alone without anybody else near him. And he was scared out of the house last week because there was knocking noises happening last week while he was here. And he just had to leave. He said after about half an hour, he just said, I've got to go. I can't stay in this house. But I'm more intrigued about what's going on. I want to know what's going on.
So you said you've had ghost hunters or paranormal people or whatever come visit your home. So what I mean, you don't have to tell us everything that's going on because people could read about it in a book, but what do they have to say? I mean, is it evil spirit or what's going on from their point of view?
So we had, once I'd finished the book, I'd finished the first draft of the book, should I say, which was probably about a year and a half ago. I'd finished the first draft. Since then, I've done another 4 drafts of the book to make sure it's perfect for going out there to everybody. But at that stage, I passed it around to a few close family and friends and basically asked them to give me some feedback and critique the book and just let me know what their thoughts were. Is it good? Does it need to be better? That sort of thing. Give me some constructive feedback. Now, at that stage, I was told by a lot of people that they wanted more answers. They wanted to know actually what's going on. They read the stories, they loved the stories, but they wanted to know actually what was going on. So I contacted a local paranormal investigation team. And they're quite famous across TikTok and Facebook and all social media and things. And they came in with a team of 3 people, and they had all the tools and all sorts of gadgets and gizmos and things to communicate with spirits. It was the strangest night. I'd asked my neighbour to, because it's a semi-detached house, I'd asked my neighbour not to be in, so there could be no noises from next door. My wife went and stayed at my mum and dad's at the time. I'd even shipped the dogs off elsewhere, and my stepson had gone to stay with his dad. So there's nobody in the house but me, which is the first time for a long time. And the house was deathly silent before they arrived. And within 10 minutes of them being here, they had their devices were screaming off. There was all sorts of, there were doors being slammed upstairs, there were footsteps upstairs. We caught voice recordings on my laptop, which they didn't even know I had plugged in upstairs recording, which is the first time I've done that ever. We caught all sorts of stuff. It was really interesting. And when he left, I basically said to him, what did you think to the house? Was it as sort of haunted as you thought it was going to be? And he said, this is one of the most haunted residences he's been to. Not for the fact of how many spirits are here, but what the spirits can actually do. He just said they're so powerful that he thinks there's 3 spirits here.
I was going to ask you if the old lady was working on her own or if she had some friends there.
Yeah, he said there were 3 spirits here, which kind of, after that, there's a local spiritualist church not too far from here, and I spoke with them, and they sent the master of all of the mediums that they had. They sent him round here to do a reading on the house. Now, before both of this guy and the paranormal team arrived, I didn't tell them my name. I didn't tell them the address. I just told them to meet me sort of on the road. I sort of give them the road address, not the full address. And the medium came round, and some of the things that he came out with were, again, quite freaky. That he believes there's 4 spirits here. So I don't know. I don't know what to go with. Again, I'm quite a skeptic, but I know there's something going on here.
I mean, did any of them tell you why they were there? I mean, it doesn't sound like, you read some of these things and it sounds like some really sinister stuff going on, but it doesn't really sound like anything sinister going on there. I mean, did they ever get into anything like, they're evil people, evil spirits, or they're nice spirits, or they're, God forbid, demons, or anything like that?
Yeah, well, both of them picked up. I mean, there's been a few sinister things. I think the thing with the knife was freaky.
Yeah.
There's been a few sinister things happen, but the majority of it is sort of playful things happening that are just not logical things happening in your face. But they are happening now. Like I say, they both picked up on all sorts of things within the house. Both teams of people.
And now it's not like on any ancient burial ground or anything.
No, it's not. It's definitely not. Well, as far as I'm aware, I've done the history checking and everything. There's nothing strange about the land. It's just seems to be this house. I've spoken to the neighbours about their houses. Is there anything weird going on elsewhere? Nothing else seems to be happening on the street. It's just this particular house. The one thing that they both did pick up on, the two teams, was the fact that the lady who'd lived here since the 1930s and died prior to me moving in. We don't know if she died in the house. We're not sure. We can't find that information out. But she certainly lived here. She owned the house when she died. She had a partner who died when he was in his, I believe he was in his 50s. They weren't married, which was brilliant because the medium and the paranormal team picked up on this, that they were partners and they weren't married. And he seems to be the one who's quite an angry spirit because he's looking for his partner.
That's really weird. Well, why can't he find her now? They're both there in your house.
I genuinely have no idea. I don't know how all that stuff works.
No.
It was both the paranormal team and the medium picked up on that and said there's a guy here who you will hear his footsteps, you'll hear him slamming doors because he's walking around the house looking for his partner. One freaky thing that the medium did say, when he actually, my wife didn't like this one, but he walked upstairs and walked into our bedroom as we were doing a sort of walk around the house, and he sort of stepped back out of the bedroom and said, "Whoa." I said, what's happening in there? And this is the master bedroom of the house. And he said, there's a vortex in here. And I said, what's a vortex? What does that mean? He said, it's basically like a wormhole for spirits. This is where spirits come in. He says, you will often hear spirits walking around up here because they're coming in through this vortex, not necessarily to stay in your house, but they come in through this vortex to go and visit other people on this street, which I wasn't too keen on the fact that was in my bedroom, if I'm going to be brutally honest. But yeah, that's the first thing he said when he walked in the bedroom and said, yeah, it's not very often you walk in a place and find one of these.
Darren was now frozen with fear as the ghostly figure suddenly stopped, turned and looked him in the eyes before turning its head back to the right and vanishing through the rear of the next-door neighbor's house. Darren clambered into the corner of the kitchen where he sat scrunched in a ball, afraid to shout for help. So what does that mean? That any old spirit could just come on through your bedroom, through the vortex?
Apparently so.
Oh, yeah, my God.
That doesn't sound like I've got much privacy, does it?
No!
Yeah, that's apparently so. That's apparently what they do.
Well, did any of them give you any advice on how you could close that damn vortex?
No, they didn't. He did actually say, do you want the house cleansing? Now, I did say to him, look, if there's any spirits here that don't want to be here, i.e. the chap who's looking for his partner, then please send him on his way. If you can help him, send him on his way. He did that, and I've written about this in the book. He apparently did send this spirit on the way to wherever they go next. But since then, we've still had things happening. So I don't know if that's happened or if it's a different spirit or what. I do not know.
Well, maybe he just came back to your house through the vortex.
Maybe. Yeah, it's true. That's very true. But yeah, it's a weird place, but I love it. It's my home. I love it. Wouldn't change it for the world. It's entertaining to me now.
So now over the years, were you like, did you keep a journal of everything that was going on, or you just knew it all in your head because you experienced it anyways?
Yeah, I think the experiences that I had, I mean, I remember all the experiences from everybody, so I've got a decent memory to remember the experience. I think the big thing getting them together for the book is that I wanted to put them in chronological order. So trying to work all of that out to get them in the right order in the book, dating back to when I first purchased the house, which was November 2004. So trying to work that order out was quite tough at the beginning. Once I'd got the order in place, there were a few phone calls that I had to make to previous housemates and people that had lived here with me to get the full story. And just to ask them the question, I think the big thing was, from the first draft that I'd written, I've never written a book before, I missed out a lot of the feelings, how people felt when things happened. And for me, I'd kind of just written about it. When I was asking about other people's feelings, how did you feel when this happened? They really went in deep and said, well, I was absolutely petrified and I couldn't speak, I was struggling to breathe, that sort of thing. So that's sort of brought across in the book now properly to how everybody felt in these 25 short stories of what have happened over the years. I mean, there's things that have happened since I've finished the book as well. That's the weird thing. People are saying, can we get a sequel to this at some stage? I'm like, well, I mean, this is 18 years worth of stories. Don't get me wrong, there's been 3 or 4 things that have happened since I've finished the book, so I could have carried on, but I think at this stage I needed to stop at some stage and get the book out there to start raising some money for Cavendish Cancer Care.
And I'm sure there's going to be a sequel if you got that vortex in your house. You know, how could it ever stop unless that thing's closed and nobody told you how you can close it?
I know. I should probably look into that. I think you'd probably like this actually, because this isn't in the book, and you're the first person I've told about this outside of telling my wife and my dad. So I struggle with something called I'm thinking of the name of it now. You have to edit this bit out yet. Sleep paralysis. So I struggle with something called sleep paralysis. Now, this is something I've had since I've lived here. I never had it back when I lived with my mum and dad. I think that is potentially because I kind of burnt the candle at both ends, working long hours, going out drinking with the boys through those years. And if I'm ever too stressed or overtired, I get sleep paralysis. Now, when I get sleep paralysis, my wife knows how to sort of get me out of it. Now, for those who don't know what sleep paralysis is, it basically means that your mind wakes up before your body. So it's quite a strange circumstance to be in. So if your mind wakes up, your body is completely paralyzed, i.e. you can't open your mouth, you can't open your eyes, but you're fully aware of what's going on around you. So when this happens, it's normally, like I say, when I'm overtired or overworked or overtired or a bit of both. When it happens, my wife just gives me a little slap on the cheek because she'll know that it's happening, because I have to try and control my breathing. So she can hear me breathing through my nose, and I'm sort of breathing heavily. I know this sounds weird, but I sort of breathe heavily through my nose because it's the only thing I can do to get her attention. And she'll just give me a quick tap on the face, and it brings me out of it, and I wake up and sort of panic over. When this first started happening when I was 19, it was like crazy, because I didn't realise you had to try and control your breathing, and you get into a bit of a panic that you're sort of stuck inside your own body. It's a really weird feeling. And for people who've had it before, you'll know what I mean, but it's very strange. Now, the other week, this was literally the week after I'd finished doing the book. I've not had sleep paralysis for about 2 years. Not particularly overtired at the minute. I had just finished the book, so I've been working hard on that. But I'd been out for a couple of beers and a game of darts with the boys at a local pub, and I got home, and with a little baby at home, I decided to sleep on the settee. So I'd let the dogs out of their cage, and they came and slept on the settee with me. I'd fallen asleep, and I was facing the door at the bottom of the stairs, where so many paranormal things have happened over the years. We've seen shadows under the door, we've seen the door handle move. All sorts of things have happened with that particular door. I'd laid down facing with my back to that on the settee with the dogs sort of curled up with me, and then fallen asleep. Now, I'd quickly realised I was in sleep paralysis, and at this stage I started to hear some footsteps behind me. Now, these footsteps were heavy footsteps, and I was trying to control my breathing, because you can imagine when you're hearing footsteps behind you in the pitch black of your front room at sort of 12 o'clock at night. I was kind of panicking a little bit, thinking, who the hell is this behind me? And as the footsteps got about halfway across the room, it's a tiled floor, the footsteps got faster, and they got faster and faster until they got right behind me. And then it felt like somebody had got their index finger stretched out and they prodded me as hard as they could underneath the shoulder blade on my back. And I jumped up, jumped straight up out of this sleep paralysis. It woke me up out of the sleep paralysis, jumped up, I turned the light on. The dogs hadn't sensed anything. They'd not gone wild or anything, but they were a bit annoyed that I'd woke them up. But they'd not sensed anything. And I took my shirt off and I went upstairs, and there's a big old sort of vintage mirror at the top of the stairs, and I looked in the mirror and there's a red mark on my back.
Oh boy.
Now, there was nobody in the front room. The door to the bottom of the stairs, where the footsteps had come from, that door wasn't open. The door to the kitchen wasn't open. There's only two doors out of that room. They're the two doors. And it's quite a cosy living room. It's not huge. But I'd walked up, I saw a red mark on my back. I sort of put my shirt back on. I went back downstairs and I got on the settee because I didn't want to wake my little one or the wife at this time of night. So I got back on the settee and I went back to sleep. Somehow went back to sleep. I think it's because I'd had a few beers. I went back to sleep. But I managed to get back to sleep. And in the morning, I got up, I went upstairs, I'd worked the next day. And as I walked into the bedroom, I took off my shirt. My wife was just sort of waking up. And she looked at me and said, "Oh my God, what have you done to your back?" And she looked at my back, asked me to turn around. And I went and looked in the mirror. And it all sort of flooded back to me. There's a big bruise right on the edge of my shoulder blade. Now, if you can imagine where this is, if you try and reach around to your own shoulder blade.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah.
I couldn't have done it myself.
No.
I couldn't reach where the bruise was without really stretching. So there's no way I could have put any force on to make a sort of. It was a really round bruise, like somebody had prodded me in the back as hard as they could with a finger or a stick or whatever it might be. That freaked me out. So I thought, if it can, whatever it is in the house can do that to me, that's quite freaky.
Yeah, because now it's getting a little physical, William.
Yeah. There were two trains of thoughts behind it though. After that, I kind of calmed myself down and thought, actually, it's either a spirit knows that I'm in sleep paralysis and my wife wasn't there to wake me up out of sleep paralysis, or it's something on the other end of the scale that wanted to freak me out while I was in sleep paralysis. But either way, it was a very strange occurrence. And that's not in the book, so that's an extra for you.
I would go with the comforting, it knew you were in sleep paralysis and it wanted to help you. And it's, that's really weird, William, too, because usually they say animals can sense this kind of stuff, and your dogs were sleeping away.
Yeah, the dogs didn't sense anything. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's been times where the dogs have gone crazy. And there is a story about my mum and dad's dog. Before I had my dog, there's a story about my mum and dad's dog in the book as well, which is probably one of the scariest events. But I'll not talk you through that one. That's an all one for you to read. But that was probably one of the scariest events in the house.
So when you were talking earlier about the medium saying that they could do a cleansing and send this guy on his way or whatever, now, did that cleansing piss any of the other spirits off that were there? I mean, did he just kind of go on his way and then it was just business as usual in your house with the regular ghosts that were in there or anything?
I genuinely do not know what happened after that. I mean, we did have that evening quite a few things happened around the house. And it was similar with when the paranormal investigation team had been here. I mean, that night after they left, it was silent for about half an hour before they left the house. I then went to bed alone in the house. No dogs, no stepson here at the time. My wife was stopping at her friends. And I got into my bedroom, and straight away, as soon as I shut the bedroom door, I could hear footsteps out on the landing. I could hear the doorknob turn into the bathroom door, which these things shouldn't be happening, but they are. And that night, I put the light. I'm not going to lie. There's no bravado in this. I went to bed with the light on, with the TV on, playing in the background. There's no bravado from me. I was in the house on my own, and I needed to get some sleep, and that was the only way I was going to do it.
So did you ever think then, after all this happened, that okay, so there's the old woman in the house, and they're thinking maybe that guy that was walking around, heavy footsteps and stuff, was her partner. Now you just sent her partner away. How do you think she feels?
Yeah, it could be that, Jen. It could be that. I genuinely do not know, but it could be.
Maybe.
Could be fuming.
I mean, could they send her away too, or I don't know what would happen. I would be kind of afraid because now you've got that vortex going on there. You've got more than one spirit. You're getting rid of some. Some are still there. You might be pissing them off. What do you do at this point, William?
Genuinely, I do not know. If I didn't laugh about it, I think I'd probably cry. So I have to laugh about these experiences now. But yeah, it's a strange place to be, Jet. That's what I'll tell you.
Well, there's a lot of things going on in the book, and the name of the book is called The Lady in the Bay Window.
It is.
It's very fitting. This book is becoming available on Halloween. And William, where can people pick up a copy and learn more about the book? I know you have a Facebook site out there. So what are some of these places people can go?
Yeah, if they want to go onto Facebook, if you do a quick search on Facebook and search for The Lady in the Bay Window, you will find the book on there. Please give the page a like or a follow. I do put plenty of little snippets from the book on there every day, just to keep you updated until the launch date, which is, as you mentioned, on Halloween on the 31st of October. Also payday for a lot of people, so that's good. That sort of coincides as well. But once the book is launched, it will be available on Amazon. So if you want to go on Amazon from the 31st of October, you'll be able to pick up a copy in paperback, hardback, or on Amazon Kindle. I'll also be working on an audiobook, which will be out later in the year. Hopefully, I'm going to do that myself, but I'll see how this interview sounds afterwards as to whether I feel like I can do the audiobook myself.
You know, Williams, really quick though, speaking about Halloween, now you've spent quite a few Halloweens in that house now, and you know how the whole paranormal world is like, you know, the veil is thin and all these spirits. Have you ever noticed like more activity in the house around Halloween or no?
I think I used to have a Halloween party here every year, a fancy dress Halloween party where, I mean, we used to have 40, 50 people around here when I was sort of in my early 20s, mid-20s, where everyone would come here for a drink and then we'd go off into the local town to carry on the festivities. So I suppose I've never really seen a lot of Halloweens in the house. I think now I've got a young family, that's going to change. So it'll be interesting to see what happens this Halloween.
We could read about it in the sequel. Okay, so again, the name of the book is called The Lady in the Bay Window. And William, thank you so much for coming on and sharing this experience with all of us.
No, thank you ever so much for having me, Jet. And as I said before, please feel free to like my Facebook page to find out more info.